Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's knowledge exchange session. My name is Stephen Ni from the Delivery Enablement team. So I will be your host today. And today's topic is the template-based approach for Axon Rest API Invocation. So Lisa and Yuan will be speakers for today's session. My pleasure to introduce you. Lisa is a senior principal architect of Informatica Professional Service team. So she is specialized in data governance, data privacy, and also the master data management area. So she has more than 35 years of experience. She got tons of consulting experience across many different industries. So her expertise in architecting the solution around the regulations such as GDPR or CCPA. So I'm sure in today's session, she will bring us some of good insights into the business value of this solution. So also Yuan is a senior consultant in Informatica PS team. So he has many experience in consulting and the software development as well. So he's specialized in Informatica product like Axon, EDC, and IDQ as well. So Yuan has many experience with data governance practice, such as framework establishment, best practice advisory, and also the implementation piece. So Yuan is very passionate about some repeatable solution to address the customer's experience or challenges. So today's session actually came from his original idea how to make the RESTful API more repeatable or user-friendly. So I'm very excited to hear these two speakers about this session. So today we will start with the use case for GDPR ROPA report, and then we will showcase the template-based solution, how you can leverage the spreadsheet-based solution to make the API calls. And then we will walk you through quickly one example, how you can show the glossary updates change over the time. And then Yuan will walk us through a little bit deeper about the solution, how it was implemented, what kind of a feature you can enhance in case you have some additional requirements around that. And then the last piece, we will have some live Q&A. So with that, I'm going to hand over the control to Lisa to walk us through the use case. Lisa?
Thanks, Jan. I appreciate the introduction. Here is a sample of a GDPR report. This comes from the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK. This is just one example of a ROPA report. A ROPA report is a record of processing activity or a report of processing activity. Depending on how your customer's legal and compliance team have interpreted the regulations, you might see this report take many different forms, but this is one of the standards that I've seen across multiple customers because it does come from that insurance commissioner or the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK. Now, what we need to do is we need to map the items in each column here in the ROPA report to Axon Facets. So this spreadsheet is for a particular process. And then within this process, they want to know the name and contact details of the controller, the data protection officer, and a representative if there's a separate representative. Now, this information here at the top of the report is not kept in Axon because Axon only keeps metadata. It doesn't keep actual data, but this would be standard boilerplate because it's always going to be the same controller, the same data protection officer, and the same representative across this report. Where we get into the Axon aspect of this is down here. Each one of these columns represents a different kind of information that we can keep in Axon. So the business function would map to the business area in Axon. The purpose of a processing would be a policy, a set of a hierarchy of policies that lists the different purposes of processing. Because in Axon, not only do we use policies for things like down here, the safeguards for exceptional transfer. So this would be your data security policies, your record retention schedules would be policies, but we're also using the policy facet as a categorization or a classification tool. And so we'll create a hierarchy of the purpose of processing names in the policy facet. The name and contact of the details of the joint controller would be a legal entity, and that's where you could enter at least the name, not necessarily the address or things like that. You'd have to use a URL to point to another location where the details are, but you could establish the joint controller as a legal entity and at least put the name and the description in there. To categorize the individuals that are processed through this process, that would be another policy hierarchy of different types of individuals or data subjects that the process works with. Also, the categories of personal data that we're using in this process would be another policy hierarchy. The categories of recipients or the third-party vendors that we share the data with or sell the data to, those would be legal entities. And then every time we share or sell data to an external third party, there should be a contract in place with that processor indicating how we allow them to use our data, how long they can have our data, what they can do with our data, and so on. And so that would be another policy, a data sharing agreement policy with that third party recipient. And then as one of the big issues with our regulatory privacy regulations is when we do share or sell that data, they also want to know where that data is going, what country it's in. So they want to know the name of the third countries or the international organizations that the data is transferred to. So that would be our geography facet. And then the safeguards and our security measures would be policies. Our record retention schedule policies would be policies in Axon. The technical and organizational security measures would also be policies in Axon. And then the Article 6 lawful basis for processing the personal data would be another set of policies in Axon. The Article 9 conditions for processing special category data would be another set of policies in Axon. And then the legitimate interest for processing the data would be another set of policies in Axon. So how does this look when you look at it in Axon? So here you can see a process map. So I'm in the census data process facet. I'm on the components tab, and that gives me this process map. So in this case, I have a census data process. It's broken down into 3 sub-processes: the data entry, collection, and validation process, the person mastering process, and then prepare data for distribution process. And as you can see in this example, I've gone up here to the overlays and I've overlaid all those policies that we described in the previous slide. And you can see there's different categories of types of individuals. There's the legal basis, the legal purpose of processing, the processing of sensitive data. Here you can see some security measures, a record retention policy, some more security measures, and a record retention policy. The purpose for transfer of data is also listed here. And then over here, you can see when we prepare the data for distribution, we have other security measures, other retention policies, and other transfer based on this contractual agreement is one of our policies that we're doing for sharing the data. So that's just one way that we capture that information into Axon. And then we'll show you in just a bit in the live demo how we use the API calls to mimic these searches that are happening in the background through the user interface. Axon is actually using those APIs to call from the process, to call the policies and display them here. I can use this overlay to show the systems, the business areas, the stakeholders, and so on. And so each one of those is a separate API call. And we'll show you how to do those API calls in the demo using an Excel spreadsheet and the Power Query facility that comes with Excel. So here's an example of another report. A lot of times, or in this case, this is one of the tabs that we're going to use, in this case, it's the process to policy example. This is one of the tabs that we're going to create in our Excel spreadsheet to make those API calls to Axon. And so here's the results, and you can see I get the ID, the reference number, the name, and the type of the process. And not only does it bring me the main process, but it also brings me all of the children of that process. And then all of the policies that I've asked for are then individual columns after the main facet. So in this case, the process attributes that I've asked for. Then each one of the policies is a separate column. And I've highlighted in purple here which policy applies to which process. So the first two policies apply to the main process. This policy down here in the third column applies to step number 5. And then this policy here applies to step number 4 in the process. And here's a sample of the code, and we'll be diving into this code a little bit later in the actual demo so that you can actually see it, and we'll walk through what things you need to change in this code in order to pull, in this case, process to policy relationships, or later on we'll see how we get the process to system relationships, process to stakeholder, process to business area, and so on. So here's a history example. So another way that we can use this Power Query Excel API call, this utility, is a lot of times customers want to know, how successful is my data governance program? Are people actually using it? Well, what I can do is I can go out to my utility tool. I can do a search on glossary item. Okay, I can include things like the created by date, the created date, and the last update date. So in this example here, I'm actually interested in the last update date. And so it pulls back every glossary item with the last update date. And then in Excel, once you have this data in the spreadsheet, you can do some post query processing and actually turn this list of update dates into a bar chart. And so we'll see an example of doing that as well. So this is what the bar chart would look like. All I did is a pivot table based on those last update dates. And so it gave me this nice bar chart. So in this case, we can see that, we entered some glossary, or we updated some glossary items in March. We've also updated some in June, or in May, in June, in July, and then again in September. So that's usually a pretty good indicator that people are actually in Axon, making sure that things are correct by tracking the last update dates. And we can see that they've actually been using it since March and about every month since then until September. Another query that we get often is, I know I use some facet. So in this case, the vendors, which would be our legal entities. Okay. And I know I use them for one service. So that would be a process. Okay. But I also know I use these vendors for other services, but I can't see all the services across all the vendors at the same time in Axon. I can see an individual process and what vendors are used, or I can see an individual vendor and what processes they use, but I can't see all of the processes against all of the services that are being used. Okay, so in this case, I know I use them for payroll, which is this bar, which is this bar here, row 31. I can see that I use all of these vendors. So Global Services, Paycom, FMP Global, and ADP. I can see I use them for payroll, but I also can see then that they also provide other services. So Paycom is also providing me services in Brazil, and then ADP is providing me services in the US as well. And so using this Power Query Excel spreadsheet, I can get more information out of Axon than what I can using the Unison search and just getting individual process or individual legal entities. I can get all of them together at the same time. So now I'm going to exit from the PowerPoint presentation and take you to the actual Excel spreadsheets. So here's that controller, the controller ROPA report, request of processing activity. And you can see up here, it's for my census data process. And so for my census data process, my business functional area is the U.S. Department of Commerce and the Office of E-Government and Information. My purpose of processing is for regulatory reporting, and it's based on the public interest. My categories of individuals are non-resident aliens, H-1B visa holders, green card holders. I'm processing personal identifiers. My categories of recipients is the Department of Education Funding Committee, because we distribute education funds based on the census. And then the Congressional Redistricting Committee. Again, we organize our congressional boundaries based on the census. And then names of the third countries to where we shared the data. So because I'm taking it from the Department of Commerce and I'm sending it down here to the Education Funding Committee and the Congressional Redistricting Committee, those are in the US. Here's a spoof on our 2010 US elections, where our census data made it to Cambridge Analytica, and they actually did some influencing of our political elections. And Cambridge Analytica is in Great Britain. So we saw that the data went to 2 US locations and then also to Great Britain. And then we see our safeguards and our retention policies here. Okay, now if I look at this spreadsheet and I look at each one of these data items up here, you can see that it's not hard coded. It actually comes from another one of the tabs in the spreadsheet. Okay, so this is just the summary page, in the summary tab in my spreadsheet. But if I go to each one of these different areas, these different tabs, in this case, I'm getting the process to business area. So here you can see, this is my process information here. So it's my census data process and its children. And then this is the business area. So the Office of E-Governance and Information Technology that owns the process once the data starts being mastered. And then the Department of Commerce owns the main part of the process. Here's the geography to the legal entities. So again, the first few columns are my process information. And then the columns after that are all the different legal entities that I might have come up with. Okay, here's my process to legal entity, or I'm sorry, that was my geography to legal entities. Here's the process to legal entity. And so here you can see, again, all the processes information. And then here is my legal entities for Facebook, Department of Education Funding, and the Congressional Redistricting Committee. And then for systems, we see that we have a census web app, an MDM system, and an outbound SFTP server. And then here's a list of all the policies. And because we use the policy facet for many different things, you can see as I scroll over that there's a lot of columns here for the policies. And then sometimes I need to know what glossary items are used here. And so address, phone number, email, their name, those are the actual glossary items that are used in that process. So how do I get this information into the spreadsheet? Well, if you're using an existing spreadsheet and you already have data, you can click anywhere on one of the cells that has data, and you'll see up here that there's 2 additional menu items that are added. So I'm going to click on Query, and then I can go into Edit. And that brings up the Power Query Editor. And then I can go into the Advanced Editor. And here you see that code that I showed you in the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so to do the API calls in Axon, you first have to get a token that has the credentials in it. Once you have that access token right here, we can see that that access token variable is used down here in our next API call when we actually go to do the search. Okay, so this just does a login check to get the token. And then once you have that token, you can use that then in your Facet search. Now, what I've done is this editor is not the most user-friendly editor. So I'm going to exit out of this editor. Now that we've seen the ROPA report as a consolidated report, and then all the tabs that made up the API calls to fulfill that consolidated report, let's walk through the instructions on how to actually write the Power Query code. So on the instructions tab here at the beginning of the worksheet, there's some helpful hints about how to set up the security, the two ways to actually get into the script editor, the advanced editor. And then once you're there in the advanced editor, we can see that for that get token section of code that's making the call to the API login check, we do need to specify the URL of your Axon instance, your user credentials, your user ID, and your password. And then when you execute that login check, then Power Query will take the JSON document that's returned from the Axon API call and convert that into this variable called access token. And then we can see the access token is used down here when we actually go to make the search API call. And again, you specify the URL of your Axon instance that you want to make this search API call on. Use the access token for it. And then as we go through the rest of this code, you can see here where I've specified the glossary as my main facet. If you're using a segment name, you would specify that here. Otherwise, if you've not used segments, then you would just use the word enterprise, because everything that's not in a segment is defaults to the enterprise segment. And then we specify the glossary name again here, the main facet. And then if I want to filter the main facet and only bring back a certain glossary item in this case, or if this was the main facet was a process, bring back just that single process with all of its children, then in this field here, I could specify which glossary or process or system name I want to filter on. And then as we continue down the code, we get to the actual relationships section. So our search scopes. So again, we're searching on glossary. Here are the fields that I want to bring back for the glossary item. I want to sort them by reference number, the glossary items by reference number in ascending order. And then here's the related facet. So this is my second facet that I want. So in this case, I want glossaries and all the policies that are applied to those glossary items. So I specify policy as my second facet name. And again, I can sort it in ascending order by the policy name. And then that's the bulk of the API calls. So everything that we see here in orange and blue is the actual setup for the API calls. Then the rest of the code here in black, again, we make the API call with Power Query. It comes back with the JSON document. And the rest of this code is to transform that JSON document into this format where we have the fields from the main facet that we want here in the first columns. And then for every related one, so in this case, this is process and policy. For every related policy, we then create a separate column, and then it puts the relationship into each cell. So in this case, we can see that the main process, the census data process, has policies related to that glossary item, or not policies, but glossary items related, and the relationship is it's a key data element for that process. So then as we look at the other example that we showed in the PowerPoint presentation, we want to generate a history graph of how often the last update dates change on a glossary item. So again, here's my code, my Excel spreadsheet, and you can see that I'm bringing back all of the glossary information here, including the created by, the created date, and the last update date. And then I am taking this last update date, and all I do is highlight all these cells, and Axon comes up with this little icon here that allows me to do quick analysis of it, and that then pops up an icon that allows me to do the bar charts, like you see here in this tab. So there's a lot of post-processing that you can do, such as the highlighting of the resulting fields to make them stand out more and be able to distinguish the ones that are being used versus the ones that are null. All that is just some post-processing conditional formatting with the highlight rules. I just set up more rules, and I can say if the cell value is not equal to null, then go ahead and format that and fill it with purple. And that's how we can do some post-processing on the actual spreadsheet. And then also by taking and highlighting the cells that you want to do a chart on and going to this section here, and then just placing that chart on a separate tab. Now the code that we've generated through our Power Query API calls. So if we go back into Query, go into Edit, go into the Advanced Editor. Okay, and you can see here the actual code. We can actually use that code with other third-party reporting tools. So in this case, because Power Query and Excel are Microsoft, I can also bring up Power BI, which is another Microsoft product, and I can directly copy and paste this code into Power BI. So we'll wait a minute until our Power BI tool comes up. Okay, so here you can see another example of the ROPA report. It has the process names up here, the business areas, the external organizations, the policies, the systems, and then the data subjects and categories of personal information down here. And I can get that information from my templates that are loaded in the background. So here you can see, Office of E-Governance and Information Technology, U.S. Department of Commerce, and that's what I dragged and dropped into my business areas. If I go into the legal entities, you can see that I've got my Congressional Redistricting Committee, my Department for Education Funding, my Facebook, and those are all my external organizations that I dragged into here. And then we can take a look at the actual data tools that we then saw back in our chart on the toolbar over here. So again, this is a nice way to be able to take your data from Axon and be able to query it through the API calls using a simple Excel spreadsheet. And then once you've got it working in the simple Excel spreadsheet, then take it over to your reporting tool and be able to use it in your reporting tool. Back to you, Jan, for your section of the presentation.
Thank you, Lisa. So thank you very much. And Lisa is really one of my key users from the day one that I have populated my template. And right now, this template has been already 5 times and iteratively upgraded. And right now I have the latest version 0.5, and with a lot of bug fix and a lot of features input. And thank you very much, Lisa, for your help. I think everybody have seen the real scenario from Lisa, that Lisa have the ROPA report created for the client. And so after seeing the real case, and I would like to quickly go you through a bit of deep dive and usage of this template. Before that, I have a small story to share you on why this template have been developed so far. It actually started very small, that in one of my projects end of last year, and the client, they have created more than 150 different projects in Axon. And each of the project represent a specific data issue they would like to address and in their roadmap in the next 5 years. And each of the project have been linked to multiple glossaries. And one of the day, and the manager of the scaling managers came to me and asked me, Yuan, hey, is there a way to generate an overview report of all of my projects in Axon and with all of the linked glossaries to them? I was already about to tell, so it's possible, and then I stopped. So wait a minute, it might not be possible, or not be easily achieved, because as you might have known, Axon, and for each of the project, we need to go into the individual project object facet, and then to export the corresponding glossaries. And then there are more than 150 projects, and it's not an easy way to do that. And then I came up to the idea about testing the Axon Rest API. Luckily, I found that I got all of the necessary information out of the REST API. But the next question is, so how can I make it business user friendly? This is where the idea coming from making this templates. And you will see on this template utilize the Axon RESTful API as the backend. To be honest, so I started from the Axon 6.3 version, and so far I didn't change the REST API core, and so it stays relatively stable. I don't need to change one code at all. And it utilized also the Power Query, which is embedded already either from the Excel sheet that usually the business user are very familiar with. And you can also replicate it if you like to the Power BI. And all the things that need to be integrated into a user-friendly template so that the business user can use it very easily and they don't need to code it at all. So this is the ultimate goal. So I would like to then quickly show you the latest version of the template. So here it is, and it is integrated. So it is written in the in a spreadsheet template, and from the first page, and you see that it's very easily the parameter that we need, and it's quite self-explained. We need first of all the URL to access Axon. We need also the user in order to get the information and call the REST API call. And you need the username and password for that. And then at least you need to have one facet, for example, glossary or process or project, etc. The second facet is for you would like to export the associated secondary facet. For example, you would like to know what are all of the policies that is associated to all of my glossaries in this case. So this is the minimum input that you need to put in. And using this template is very straightforward. The easiest part is, so usually you will have the parameter tab, advanced tab, how to release node, and data tab. And for the beginner that first have used the template, and you can simply click on the data tab. Make sure that you have put into the right parameters here. Go to the data tab. Make sure that your mouse have selected the first row, first column, and click on this menu query, and then click on this refresh. And then it is already loaded here. Just in case that it is somewhere cached, then I would like to quickly do differently. For example, I would like to show the process to policy relationship and then into one spreadsheet. I can just go here and click on the refresh once again. You see that it's running in the background already, the query, and then your latest information will be updated here. And you have, of course, so all of the necessary information, which is related to the main facet. In this case, this is the process, all of the process with their individual information that we directly get it from the REST API call in the JSON format. And then you get the associated facet name. For example, what is the corresponding policies here and to which processes that is related to. It's very easy for you to just do a quickly filter function here and then to narrow down the search result. And this is one of the use case that when you have this template. And the second case is, and the second case I would like to show you is to have the relationship filter. As you can see here, often in the practical case and the data governance project and have been the different relationship type between the facet have been individualized in different projects. So of course, we have the standardized and default relationship type, but in reality, that could be much more, right? So in the current Axon implementation, there's no out-of-box feature to say, I would like to filter specific relationship types. And therefore, with this template, it's very easily for the user to specify and filter according to the relationship type in this case. It's very easy for you to just create a new tab. For example, if you have changed the parameter and you would like to load a new report based on new relationship. Let's take a look. For example, I would like to know and all of the process step, and which is related to and their associated glossary in this case. I go to the new tab and click on the data tab, choose the existing connection, and then choose the master list and click on open. Okay, and then he will run. So the code will run in the background, as you see from my screen, and you will see the result. And the next one I would like to show you is even in Axon, it is not possible yet. Is, for example, you would like to export on all of the associated attributes and to a specific physical field and with their path. And I have identified this prop was sometimes the user, they would like to know, okay, so what is the corresponding physical object that we have linked to EDC that we have used, linked the attribute and from Axon to the EDC part, and can we show that? So currently there's no an easy way to do that, but the REST API provided us already in information. Therefore, it is also be integrated already in the template, so that as you see here, so if you change the parameter here, for example, the field and to attributes here, and then we just create a new tab here. You can say, okay, so since you have configured already the information, and then right now you can load it. It's very easy to get all of the relationship between the physical field and also the attributes. This is very important when you would like to do the physical to attribute import, but with the current export, it is not really giving you this object ID information out of the box. And the next one I would like to show you is actually the glossary to glossary information. As you have seen, so in Axon, I don't know whether you have tried before. So in Axon, for example, when a specific glossary that he has the parent-child relationship, of course, it's very easy to find that by setting up the right filter. But to have all of the overview to the glossary to glossary relationship is not very easily to get it out of the box from the unison search. And therefore, it is very straightforward that the user can simply choose the first facet on the glossary and to glossary, and then to load it in a new tab. And it's very easily for you to filter out, okay, so you might have some of the glossary to glossary relationship. So when it is marked as is relative to and without the relationship type, that means that they are typical children and parent relationship. And then some of them are specifically with the individualized relationship linked to. All right. So this is really the basic usage of using this parameterized template. And you see from the real case from Lisa, in a lot of real case is that the user the Axon user is coming from the governance perspective, and they really would like to have very how should I say, dedicated or complex report on out of governance purpose. And a lot of them, they would like to cascade the different report, the simple report, and into a complex one. And with this template, it's very easy to combine them together and then to, how should I say, to cascade the different output and into the consolidated report. And it's much more business user friendly comparing to call the Axon Rest API instead. So before we come to the summary session and also the Q&A session, I would like to specifically introduce you the advanced parameters here. And I think that it's definitely necessary to know that, and it's very easy to ignore that, how important it could be. First of all, so the parameter is the object limit. As in Axon REST API, a user is able to specify the number of the object to load. And for the normal usage, for example, if you just would like to load the process, policy, etc., those facets are less likely to be more than 500. You can leave it as default. But for example, if you would like to know the corresponding glossary to the attributes, such relationship that you're pretty much sure that is the object, the facet might very likely more than 500. So please go here and then adapt the object limit before you run the query. And the second thing is, so I let this add reference number as default yes, because, so simply show you the reason, is that sometimes we might have some object that they have the same name. And therefore, I would like to edit some of the ID number in before so that it's easier for the user to filter them. So we don't have any ambiguity here. And the third one is, do you like to show it in the multi-row mode, or you would like to show it in the multi-row mode or the multi-column row mode? The multi-column row mode is actually what you have seen from Lisa's report. And if I have changed it to it, and I can go back to the query and then press the refresh. Oh, I think that this one's really a bad one because we have a lot of attributes. Yeah, as you see, so if you have changed the mode and then he will edit different, the secondary facet, the associated one into the individual column in this case. All right. So I think I would like to move it back to Stephen. So Stephen, would you like to start the summary sharing? Thank you. So, dear audience, as you have seen, so the template itself is really would like to provide you the a good opportunity, the utility or alternatives to use and to get the information out of Axon in a very user-friendly way. And as you see, it's quite easy for even user who doesn't know the REST API at all, and simply just to being able to change some parameter, and they can get already the information out of Axon, and then to build up a much complex report. And if they are familiar with using the spreadsheet, and it's also very easy to be able to answer some quick answer to the business question, and they don't need to really I should say to go into Axon and then to have a deep dive into where can I find what, or even to write a code. So therefore, we would like to introduce you this template and to speed it up your user your delivery, and also to provide you a alternative for your client, and if they are more a business user friendly way to form the report out of Axon. And last but not least, and as you have seen, to use this template, and user need to put on the username and also the password as the login information to get to let the REST API function. And therefore, according to our experience, so if they contains and really sensitive information, and then we don't encourage you to put it into the production use.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yuan, and also thank you very much for Lisa for the great session. It's wonderful. Thank you for watching this session.